Okay, good morning, everybody. My wife got a very strange phone call from her boss yesterday. The boss is not Jewish, and he loves egg matzahs. And he said, but I don't understand it. There's a warning label on the box, only for old people and sick people. What's that all about? Anyhow, if we have time, we'll talk about egg matzah. This is for you before you leave. Got to give it to you. Okay. Now that Purim is over, Pesach is in full swing. Stores are, even before Purim, had the Pesach products up. And I wanted to talk about the key mitzvah of Pesach, which is matzah. Specifically, the most important part, you're not required to eat matzah all week long. Only at the Seder. Just can't eat chametz all week long. But the matzah that we eat has undergone several evolutions. Initially, the matzah that people used to eat was very similar to what the Sephardim eat. It's more like a pita bread, almost, a soft matzah. But it's very difficult to make that kind of matzah without it becoming chametz, because the interaction of water and flour ferments within at least 18 minutes, not faster, and it's very difficult to make that type of a soft matzah. Sephardim have a Masorah. They do have these type of matzahs, which obviously makes it easier to understand how Hillel could have a matzah sandwich. For us to have a matzah sandwich is, very crummy. I remember going to the ball game or going to the circus, carrying your matzah sandwiches. It's crumbs all over the place. Very hard to eat that. So that's an evolution all by itself. Rav Schechter wrote an interesting number of tshuvos on whether or not an Ashkenazi can eat Sephardic matzah. Interesting question. In any event, in 1838 in France, they came up with a way of making matzah in a machine-made matzahs, which generated a whole bunch of other questions that I want to discuss with you. Basically, the whole issue of whether or not you're allowed to eat on Pesach machine-made matzahs. That's question number one. Question number two, if you have machine-made shmura matzah, is that acceptable at the Seder? Because matzah is very, very specific concerning shmura. You have to, the Torah says, "Ushmartem es hamatzos." You have to guard the matzahs from coming to any contact with water to become fermented. And there's a machlokes whether it's from the time of harvesting or from the time of milling, but the matzah companies, both hand and machine, have mashgichim out in the fields, the wheat fields in Nebraska, other places, to watch the harvesting of the grain, to store them in dry places, and they watch to make sure that no rain or no moisture comes in contact with the grain until it is milled, until it is made into matzah. So that's a special requirement for the night of the Seder, that you have to have matzah shmura, matzah that is guarded. Regular matzah, we assume is okay, because if it comes in contact with water, it becomes chametz. But that requirement on machine matzahs is a big problem, because the regular machine matzahs for Pesach don't have the same level of guarding it against coming in contact with moisture. That's question number one. Question number two is the whole issue of lishma, that matzah for the Seder has to be made for the specific purpose of being makayim, the mitzvah of eating matzah at the Seder. It's called lishma, for its own sake. And the other question that comes up with machine-made matzah in general, and machine shmura matzah, which does exist, is, can a machine have kavana? Can a machine make matzah lishma? So those are the questions. So there are a number of questions concerning, again, machine matzahs in general and shmura matzah in particular. So question number one is how the process works today. Forget about what was when. The process has been improved, although the matzah machines that they have now probably are the same as they had for the past 100 years or so. It hasn't changed that much. Many years ago, I spent Shabbosim quite often at the home of Bill Manischewitz, Olav Shalom. He was the last Manischewitz to make Manischewitz matzahs. Very fine man. Married to an Israeli who served in the Israeli army in Milchemet HaShiur. Very fine family. And I had the opportunity to visit several his factory in Jersey City at the time, and Strites, and it's amazing to see how matzah is made by machine. Regular matzah, shmura matzah. YU used to have a Pesach store, and for many years they would sell machine shmura, machine matzah, and hand shmura, and wine. And it was only for students and faculty. But people in the neighborhood were very jealous because they were getting people buying matzah and wine at very cheap prices, but they couldn't get it because they weren't part of the university. And somebody apparently squealed to the New York State Liquor Authority that they were selling wine without a liquor license, and after 30-40 years, the store had to close up. But the Kerastira hand shmur that I got then, I still get now. I'm picking it up this Sunday. In any event, the machine matzah is problematic on a number of levels in general, but I'm talking about specifically for Passover. And they try very hard. I want to discuss the process of how machine matzah is made, and also a halakhic concept of how you allow certain things that are prohibited to occur. You have in halakha a concept of lishma, that matzah has to be made for the specific purpose of the mitzvah. So if a mashgiach says l'shem matzos mitzvah and presses the button to start the machine going, does not qualify as lishma. That's one discussion. Discussion number two has to do with various leniencies that we allow. Most leniencies regarding kashrus all year long, and specifically on Pesach, most leniencies are b'di'evid, after the fact. Something happens. Can I allow the matzah or the food or the issue to happen? I did something wrong by accident, or something happened, and how do you deal with it after the fact when something has already happened? Like if you have a parva pot and it got mixed up with fleshik pots, after the fact, how do you deal with it? That's after the fact. Most kulos, most leniencies deal with after the fact situations. There's a concept of ein mevatlin isa lechatchila, that you don't apply certain leniencies before anything happens. For example, if a drop of milk fell into a pot of meat accidentally, so that little drop of milk is less than 1/60th of the entire contents of the pot. So we say, b'di'evid, you're not going to throw out the whole pot, you allow it. If you can afford to throw it out, fine. But we allow it after the fact. Can you put a drop of milk in beforehand? No. The same thing is true with the matzah machines. You have these huge vats, and a pre-measured amount of water is poured in, and a pre-measured amount of flour, and it gets mixed up, and then it gets cut up in different sizes, spread out, smoothed out, cut into squares. And by the way, this is interesting. The original machines in Europe used to make round machine matzahs. But the problem was the extra dough that was left over after you cut out the circle would become chametz. And that is why all machine matzahs are square today, because of that halakhic concept, because it's easier to do it that way, to cut it up. All right, so you have the dough mixed, you have it cut into size, and you have it on rollers that go through the oven. And I will say that most of the machine matzahs are made, the rollers are like a roller coaster. They're not flat. It's up and down. It's kept in motion so that the pieces of dough are bouncing up and down as they go into the oven, because it takes 18 minutes of it just sitting there and it becomes chametz. The whole process from beginning to end takes about 12 minutes, 13 minutes maybe. But the rollers, the rollers that it goes into the oven are rolling along, so the matzah is moving, fine. The problem is, if you go to them, and they used to have tours of matzah factories. They don't have them anymore because people are getting more and more educated and they notice the problems. Okay? First of all, there's flour dust all over the place. And pieces of dough, no matter how you want to do it, get stuck in the machinery. So what you have is every piece of Passover matzah that comes out is chametz. There's no way around it. But you say it's a small amount. So, but again, it's the question of applying a leniency after the fact or l'chatchila, before it happens. So, ein mevatan ish l'chatchila, but the fact is we do it afterwards. When you say kol chamira, after you search for the chametz, Erev Pesach, you say any chametz in my possession, I nullify, I disown completely. That allows you to eat machine matzah. It's a heter of a heter of a heter. But when you look, that they had, to their credit, they have mashgichim all along the, what do they call that? The conveyor belt with air hoses, spraying away the extra flour. They do the best they can. But it's problematic. It's problematic. The other problem is it requires lishma. So can a machine have intention to do a mitzvah? So by saying l'shem matzos mitzvah and pressing the button, again, we allow it. We allow, at best, it is very, very problematic to eat machine matzahs on Pesach. We allow it as a kula of a kula of a kula of all kinds of leniencies. And now, in addition to that, you also have some companies that make machine-made shmura matzah. So if for whatever reason you don't have regular hand matzah, that's matzah shmura for your seder, at least get machine shmura, at best. Going back to Mr. Manischewitz, I don't know if they do it anymore, but in the 70s at least, Manischewitz used to actually make shmura matzah, but they didn't sell it. They gave it away to yeshivas. People don't know that. I used to get boxes and boxes of machine shmura from Manischewitz. They just gave it away, right? At yeshiva, because of the problems with the matzah, the machinery, we had to deal with hardwood. Was it strikes? We had to deal with strikes. We had to deal with strikes, and that they would put aside the first run of the matzah every morning for us to sell at yeshiva. Broyers did the same thing with Harwitz Margaret. The first run, because at night they would clean the machinery. They can't clean it after every run. It's impossible. You never get anything done. But at night they would clean with steam and hoses, and the first run in the morning, there'd be nothing stuck in the machinery yet. So we would get that the first run. But you have no way of knowing when you go into the store to buy matzah, that's obviously not necessarily the first run of the day. But these are serious issues with the machine matzahs. So there's the halacha that I work with all the chuvos, but the heter that they allow, one of the heter, aside from these ein mevatan ish l'chatchila and using rove, there are certain things that apply all year long that don't apply on Pesach. And we're very, very strict because the Isur of eating chametz on Pesach, is very, very serious. We have, I just forgot what to say. The Isur l'chatchila, I'll come back to it. The machinery as I say, had to be cleaned and had the first baking every morning. All week long, you don't necessarily have to have matzah shmura. That's only the Seder. You're not required to eat matzah all week long, as long as you don't eat chametz. But people need to eat, so they eat matzah during the week. What else? There's so many things. Oh yes, the machlokes about lishma actually was resolved a little bit before the invention of machines to make matzahs, having to do with tzitzis. The machinery, at some point, they used machinery to spin the wool to make tzitzis. And tzitzis also require lishma. The tzitzis have to be made for the purpose of the mitzvah of wearing tzitzis. So the question was, can the machine be used to make the woolen strands that you use for tzitzis if it requires lishma? So based on that machlokas, they said, yes, if the guy says l'shem mitzvah tzitzis and he presses the button and it spins the wool, so based on that, they gave a heter to use machine matzah. But again, be aware that machine matzahs are a heter. It's a b'di'evid. It's an after-the-fact solution to the mitzvah of eating matzah on Pesach. It's preferable, at the very, very least, to use hand matzah for the Sedarim. It's even better to use hand matzah all week long, but that could be expensive. I was very lucky. I was very fortunate many, many years ago when I was a teacher. I joined a matzah cooperative in Borough Park. And I'm picking up 15 pounds of matzah this Sunday. It's costing me $390, which is very cheap, like $20 and change a pound. Whereas a lot of hand matzah is going for like $60, which is crazy. And it's very good matzah, Kerastira matzah. In any event, and you got to have exact change. It's, you go to a basement in Borough Park, whatever. Okay, but lishma is very, very important. Now, people are allergic to wheat. There are shmura matzah out of spelt and oats. You can get that gluten-free. You can get it. That's even more expensive. Matzah also has to have koach gavra. It has to be. How do you translate koach gavra? You have to be involved in the actual physical process. So again, is pushing the button qualify for that as koach gavra, human force, to use the expression. So if the guy starts the process going, that would be acceptable. The end. All the gedolim deal with this issue, and just be aware that the tzach halakha that allows us to use machine matzah, machine shmura matzah, is a heter. It's an after the fact, but l'chatchila you really should use hand matzah. Okay. The other issue is egg matzahs. Egg matzahs are very, very problematic. I don't know how they allow it, because regular matzah is made with water and flour. That's it. And the Gemara says if you make it with other things like juice or eggs or wine, any other liquid other than water, to knead the flour to make the matzah, it becomes chametz very, very quickly, faster than the 18 minutes, the fermentation process. Egg matzah today is made with eggs and apple juice, which hastens the fermentation process very, very quickly. And I just, even though it says you can only eat this if you're sick or you can't chew, again, it's a heter of a heter of a heter after the fact. It's just very, very problematic for egg matzah to be kosher l'Pesach altogether, even though it has all great rabbis signing on to it and giving a hechsher. But it's a mitzvah that occurs only once a year. It's a mitzvah that is specified very, very clearly in Chumash and the Gemara and the Halacha, and we should try mitzvahs that occur all year long. don't have the same level of intensity as certain mitzvahs that occur only once a year. And you should make the most of that opportunity. And therefore, I mean, it would be my recommendation. I'm not a posek, ask your local rabbi, but it would be my recommendation. And I'm not usually machmir in most situations, but in this situation, I feel it's important. The observance of the mitzvah properly is to be machmir and to use hand matzah, if possible, all week long. Because machine matzah, again, machine matzah bears a stamp of approval of the OU and the important rabbanim, and after the fact, you apply various leniencies to say that it's kosher lePesach beyond any question or doubt. However, that being said, in my humble opinion, it is not the preferable way to go on Pesach, because in order to eat those matzahs, you have to rely on many, many different leniencies in order to get to that point. And as I say, the machine matzah factories don't give tours anymore, because yeshiva bachurim and people that go in know the halacha. How do you allow that? How do you allow that? And again, when I saw it the last time, many years ago, they had rabbis all along the line of the entire, what do they call it, the assembly line, the conveyor belt, with air hoses, because dough and flour does accumulate, and you can't clean the crevices of these chains every 2 minutes. You can't do that. You can't steam clean it after every run of matzahs. You never get any matzahs done. And they start baking before Hanukkah to do the quantity that they do. So there are a lot of different varieties of hand matzah out there with hashgachos. Some are better than others. Some are thinner than others. And the supermarkets probably sell it cheaper. They can get it. The regular supermarkets are probably cheaper than the Jewish supermarkets, I would imagine, although I don't know. But I would urge the consumption of hand shmura all week long, not just at the Seder, but at the very least, you don't fulfill the mitzvah of matzah at the Seder unless you use hand shmura matzah. And it's just fascinating that the halacha did influence the machines to make them square as opposed to round. Because simply when you make it round and you cut the dough, pieces of dough just hang around. That's why you have square matzahs. I just will conclude with an interesting story. My father, Oliver Shalom, used to tell me when he was a kid, his job was to make the matzah meal. So what did they do? They had these huge matzahs, the size of this table, big round matzah. They would wrap it in a sheet. Some of you might remember the old ringers, those two wooden rolls where you put clothes through, before you had a washing machine, right? So they would take this big matzah, wrap it in the sheet, and put it through the roller. And that's how you had matzah meal. If you put it through a second time, you had even what do you call, not matzah meal.
First it's farfel, then it's farfel's bigger pieces, and then matzah meal, and then cake meal.
That's right. Yeah, the cake meal, you put it through a second time, and you had cake meal. And that's how they used to do it back in the old country. Anyhow, that was my spiel on matzah. I wish you all a chag kosher v'sameach.
Wally.
Yes,
Wally.
Go.
Does matzah l'shmo have a time limit? In other words, it's made for Pesach.
No. Each time you bake the matzah, the mashgiach says l'shem matzah mitzvah for each run.
So, all right, but so you make it for that mitzvah for the Pesach.
Correct.
How about, so on that Pesach you don't use it, you have it next year?
Oh, you can keep it for the following year, but when you're eating it at the Seder, you would say l'shem matzah mitzvah. The kavanah each year has to be renewed.
That's my question. Thank you.
Yeah. Anything else?
This is a silly one.
Yeah.
Box of square matzahs. The square matzah has lines, basically.
Yes.
Right? If you have it like this in the box, you just break off a piece nice and easily. But all the matzah comes so it's like this. So you put your hand in to break a piece off, and it goes all over the place.
Well, okay. So it's interesting that the round matzahs, by the way, are also perforated. If you look at them carefully. Again, if you if you bake hand matzah, it's an experience. You have two rooms, each with a window, opposite like a hallway. And one guy sits in one room with the water, another guy sits in another room with the flour. He would stick his hand through a window and pour a pre-measured amount of flour into a big bowl. And the other guy sticks the hand to the other side and puts in a pre-measured amount of water. And then somebody would be standing ready there to mix it all together. And then all this has to take place within 18 minutes. So it's usually done within 10 minutes. Somebody mixes it up, tears off little balls, throws it down a room, a long table. People have these, what they call a valgaholz, like a rolling pin, to roll out those little balls into bigger circles. Somebody would perforate it, put it on a big stick, put it into the oven, and the whole process would be done in 12 minutes. And all the time while they're doing it, the mashgiach is going up and down the table saying, L'shem matzah mitzvah, L'shem matzah mitzvah. Then it goes into the paper on the table, goes into the oven as well. Then the mashgiach examines everybody's fingernails, make sure there's no dough or flour in there. You wash your hands. The rolling pins are sandpapered down. You have fresh rolling pin every time. Process starts again. That's how you make the hand matzah. It's a fascinating thing. If you ever have an opportunity to make hand matzah, it's worthwhile going. See how it's done. Fascinating stuff. Anybody else? Okay.
Thank you, Wally. Thank you very much.
Have a great day. Yishem Adonai Baruch Netov Yad Olam.
Amen. Photo.
Rosh Chal Mishlot V'Chayinu.
Somebody's